Okay, let's dive into a chapter of American history that for a long time was almost completely forgotten. We're going to uncover the story of a man who went from the absolute depths of slavery to the very heights of American power, and whose legacy, it turns out, is still being fought for right now.
So picture this. You're in Jackson, Mississippi, and you come across a street named Lynch Street. Now, given the painful, awful history of that word in America, your mind immediately goes to one thing, right? The horrific act of lynching. But the real story here is the complete opposite. It's not a story of tragedy, it's a story of triumph. It's named for John Roy Lynch, a man who just completely defied the odds.
And that's the big question, isn't it? Who was John R. Lynch? Because really, to understand his story is to get a handle on the incredible promise, the absolute heartbreak, and, the unfinished business of one of the most important eras in American history, Reconstruction. But his story doesn't just live in old dusty books. For us, it actually starts today, with his legacy being actively fought for and reclaimed by the people who know his importance best. Yeah, and this is what's so cool. It's not just a historical society, it's a living, breathing mission. It was founded by his own family, his descendant. They're making sure his story isn't just a footnote in some textbook. They're focused on education, right there in Mississippi, and they're even re-releasing his powerful writings to make sure his voice and the truth he fought for can still be heard today. So how did he do it? How did this man get a street named after him? Well, let's hit the rewind button and watch one of the most incredible, and I mean lightning-fast, climbs in all of American political history. Just look at this timeline, it's almost hard to believe. In the span of a single decade, John Lynch goes from being legally considered property to being a U.S. congressman making federal law. He learns to read, he becomes a photographer, and then, boom, in just 4 years, he goes from being a local judge to the Speaker of the House for the entire state of Mississippi. And then he's off to Washington, D.C. It's astonishing. And here's the number that just puts it all into perspective. 26. That's how old John R. Lynch was when he walked on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives. I mean, just think about that for a second. A formerly enslaved man, now a federal lawmaker from Mississippi, and he was barely old enough to even run for the office. He was one of the youngest members of Congress, period. But he didn't go to Washington just to be a quiet newcomer. No way. He went there to fight. And in 1875, during this huge debate over a landmark civil rights bill, he gave a speech that was, well, nothing short of genius. So he starts with this incredibly smart legal argument. He basically says to his opponents, okay, fine, let's use your own strict, narrow interpretation of the Constitution. And then he just masterfully turns it right back on them. He points out that the entire purpose of the 14th Amendment was specifically to prevent the exact kind of discrimination they were trying to defend. He completely trapped them in their own logic. Then he takes on the biggest scare tactic of the day, this idea of forced social equality. Opponents were screaming that the bill would force black and white people to socialize against their will. So Lynch flips the entire argument on its head with this devastating wit. He's pretty much saying, don't flatter yourselves. Just because the law says we can be in the same train car doesn't mean I actually want to hang out with you. He just completely dismantled their argument and made them look ridiculous. And right here, this is where he brings it from the legal and the logical down to something deeply, deeply personal. He describes the raw daily humiliation of traveling to the very capital where he serves as a lawmaker, only to be segregated and treated like a brute. He makes his colleagues look him in the eye and see that this isn't some abstract debate. This is about his and every other Black American's basic human dignity. So after his time in Congress, Reconstruction gets violently dismantled, and Lynch faces this entirely new kind of battle. This one wasn't fought on the floor of the House, it was fought on the pages of history books. All of a sudden, this new, racist version of history starts taking hold, pushed by a group of academics called the Dunning School. They basically painted Reconstruction as this total disaster run by corrupt, idiotic Black politicians. And this lie became the historical excuse for Jim Crow segregation and violence. John Lynch saw this poison spreading, and he refused to let it stand. He picked up a pen and fought back with his most powerful weapon, the truth. He wrote a book called The Facts of Reconstruction. And his service didn't just end there. I mean, look at this. He was a major national figure in politics for decades. He served his country again, this time as a major in the U.S. Army. He practiced law and lived to be 92 years old, a lifelong fighter. And his burial in Arlington National Cemetery Well, that's the final testament to a lifetime of service. And all of this, it brings us right back to where we started, back to that street in Jackson, Mississippi. Because Lynch's story, even though it's over a century old, has honestly never been more relevant than it is right now. His whole life was a battle over civil rights and the rule of law. But his final and maybe most important battle was over the telling of history itself. He absolutely knew that whoever controls the story of the past holds a huge amount of power over the future. And that very same debate about what Reconstruction was, what it really meant, and whose stories get told, well, it feels like it's happening all over again today. So we're left with this thought, right? A man who lived through one of America's most intense and difficult periods spent his final years fighting to make sure the truth of it all was remembered. And the work his family is doing today proves that fight is still going on. Which kind of raises the final question for all of us, doesn't it? What's our role in making sure these crucial histories aren't just preserved, but are actually heard and understood?